Hello Virgo. I need a second before I start this one. And I want to be honest with you about why, because I think it actually matters for how this reading is going to land. Normally, when I sit down to do one of these, there's a kind of process. I tune in, I notice things. Sometimes it takes a minute for the picture to come into focus. Sometimes it's clearer right away, but there's a rhythm to it, a pace. This one didn't have that. This one came in fast. And it came in big, big enough that I actually had to stop physically for a moment before I could even start describing it. Not because it's bad. I want to say that clearly right away, because I'm still shaking can sound alarming, and I don't want anyone sitting with this thinking something's wrong. It's not that kind of shaking. It's more like when something moves through you that's bigger than what you were braced for, and your body responds before your mind catches up. That's what happened. And I think it's happening or about to happen for you too. Let me try to describe the scale of this, because I think that's actually the most important thing to convey. What I'm picking up isn't a single event. It's not this one thing happens in June and then things go back to normal. What I'm sensing is more like an atmospheric shift, the kind of thing where the entire texture of your day starts to feel different, not because of one specific cause you can point to, but because multiple things in different areas of your life are moving at once in the same general direction. I keep coming back to the word current. Like, imagine you've been standing in water that's mostly still, not stagnant exactly, just calm. And then somewhere upstream, something changes, and suddenly the water around you has movement to it, direction, pull. You can feel it against your legs, this sense of things wanting to go somewhere, even before you've decided to go anywhere yourself. That's June for you. A current that wasn't there before, or that's been very faint, very slow, and is now picking up speed. Have you felt anything like that already? Even just in the last few days? A sense of something building, even if you couldn't say what? Tell me in the comments, because I think some of you are already feeling the edges of this, even if it hasn't fully arrived yet. Um, I want to break this down into pieces because big energy shift is a lot to take in all at once. And I think it'll help to look at where specifically this is showing up. The first place I'm sensing it is internal. Something in how you relate to yourself, your own sense of who you are and what you're capable of, is shifting. And I want to be careful here because this isn't about becoming a different person. It's more like a kind of settling, things that have felt uncertain about yourself, questions you've been carrying, maybe without even realizing you were carrying them, starting to resolve, not because you figured them out through effort, but because something about where you are right now is making certain things clearer than they've been. I keep getting this image of fog lifting, not all at once, but enough that you can suddenly see distances you couldn't see before. Things that were close, that felt like they were right in front of you, taking up a lot of space, suddenly look smaller, more manageable once you can see what's beyond them. And things that felt impossibly far away, things you'd stopped really considering as part of your actual life, start to look closer, more reachable. That's the internal piece, a recalibration of distance, of what's near and what's far in terms of your own life and what's available to you in it. The second place I'm sensing this shift is relational. And here, I think there's something specific worth talking about. What I'm picking up is movement around the people in your life, but not in a uniform way. Some relationships are going to feel like they're deepening almost suddenly, like something that's been simmering quietly is starting to come to a boil. And other relationships, ones that have maybe felt important or at least present um, for a while, are going to start feeling lighter, less central, not necessarily ending, but shifting in terms of how much space they take up in your life. I think this is connected to the internal shift I just described. As your own sense of what's near and far changes, the people around you start to redistribute too, in a sense, not because of anything dramatic happening between you and them necessarily, more because your own energy is moving. And relationships tend to find their natural distance based on where your energy actually is, rather than where it's been out of habit for a while. There's someone specific I want to mention here. I'm getting a sense of a person who's been somewhat in the background, maybe someone you think about more than you'd expect, given how present they actually are in your day to day life. And I think in this shift, this person moves closer, not necessarily into some big dramatic role, but closer than they've been. Like the distance between you and this person, which has felt fixed for a while, like just how things are, starts to feel less fixed. More like it was only ever fixed because neither of you had moved, and now something's moving. Does someone come to mind when I say that? Someone who's been kind of consistently present, but at a certain distance for a while now. I think that distance is about to change. And I think it's going to happen during this window we're talking about. Um, the third place I'm sensing this shift is more practical, circumstantial, the actual structure of your days, your environment, the concrete details of your life. What I'm picking up here is less specific than the other two, honestly. And I want to be upfront about that rather than trying to force a clarity I don't actually have. But there's a sense of something physical changing. Maybe something about where you spend your time, maybe something about your daily routine, the rhythm of your week. I keep getting flashes of movement, literal movement, like travel or a change in where you're spending your days. But I don't want to pin that down too specifically because I'm honestly not sure if it's literal or more symbolic of a broader change in your environment. What I am confident about is that something about the physical container of your life, the actual setting, is going to feel different by the time this shift has moved through. Not necessarily a move in the sense of relocating, though that's possible for some of you, but at minimum, a change in how your environment feels. Familiar places feeling slightly different, new places becoming familiar faster than they normally would, that kind of thing. Okay, I want to come back to the shaking because I think there's something important in unpacking why this particular shift feels as big as it does compared to other periods of change you've probably been through. What I'm sensing is that this isn't really a single shift, it's multiple shifts happening close together in a way that creates a kind of compounding effect. Any one of these, the internal recalibration, the relational movement, the change in your environment, any one of these on its own would probably feel manageable. Significant, maybe, but manageable. The kind of thing you'd notice, adjust to, and move forward with. But when several of these happen at once, or close enough together that they overlap, the effect isn't just additive. It's more like each shift makes the others feel bigger because none of them are happening in isolation. There's no stable ground to stand on while you process one thing because multiple things are moving simultaneously. And that's disorienting, even when every individual piece of it is good. I think that's why this feels like big energy rather than just a change. It's not that any single element is overwhelming, it's that the simultaneity of it creates an intensity that's different from how change usually feels for you. And I want to say that intensity is not a warning sign. I know I'm still shaking can sound like something alarming happened, but what I'm picking up is an alarm. It's more like the body's response to something big, regardless of whether that something is good or bad. Excitement and fear actually feel really similar physiologically. Fast heartbeat, that hollow feeling in the stomach, a kind of heightened alertness. The body doesn't always distinguish clearly between something exciting is happening and something is wrong. It just registers something significant is happening and responds accordingly. What I'm picking up here is significant, not wrong, significant. I want to talk about timing a little more because June 2026 is broad, and I think there's a more specific window within it that matters. What I'm sensing is that the early part of this shift, the part where things start moving, where you might start noticing that current I described earlier, is close, very close, like days, not weeks. And then there's a period after that, maybe a week or two, where things continue to build, where the different pieces I described start becoming more visible, more concrete. I don't think this is a shift that resolves quickly, like it happens and then it's done by the end of the month. I think it's more like the beginning of something that continues to unfold for a while, but the initial wave of it, the part that's going to feel the most intense, the part connected to the shaking that's happening now or very close to now. If you're watching this and you've already felt something, some sense of movement, some sense of things being slightly different than they were a few days ago, even if you couldn't articulate how, I think that's the beginning of this. You're not imagining it. It started. I want to address something that might be sitting with you, which is a kind of bracing. Like, okay, big shift, multiple things happening at once. That sounds like a lot. Is this going to be hard? Here's what I'd say. I don't think hard is quite the right word, but I do think a lot is accurate. There's a difference. Hard implies something you have to push against, something that resists you. What I'm sensing is more like a lot of input, a lot of new information, new movement, new things to take in a relatively short span of time. That can feel overwhelming. Not because any of it is bad, but just because of the volume. What helps with volume, generally, isn't trying to process everything immediately. It's giving yourself permission to take things one piece at a time, even if multiple pieces are arriving close together. You don't have to fully understand the relational shift and the internal shift and the environmental shift all at once in order to move through them well. You can let each one settle into focus as it becomes relevant, rather than trying to hold the whole picture in your mind from the start. I want to say something about the internal shift again, because I think it's actually the foundation for everything else. And I don't want it to get lost in all the other pieces. What I described earlier, that sense of fog lifting, of distances recalibrating, I think that's actually the thing that makes everything else possible. Because if your sense of what's near and far, what's possible and what isn't, stayed exactly as it's been, the relational shifts and the environmental shifts wouldn't really have anywhere to land. You'd notice them, maybe, but you'd probably minimize them, fold them back into your existing sense of how things are, rather than letting them actually change anything. The internal shift is what makes the other shifts actually mean something. It's the part of you that's becoming able to receive a bigger picture rather than just noticing more details within the same old picture. And I think that's actually the most exciting part of all this, even though it's the hardest to describe concretely. It's not just that things are changing, it's that you're becoming someone for whom a bigger version of life is starting to feel normal rather than aspirational or distant or someone else's life. That shift in what feels normal to you is going to keep paying off long after this specific June window has passed. I want to close with something simple, even though everything I've described is pretty big. The shaking, the intensity, the sense of a lot happening at once, that's real, and I don't want to minimize it. But underneath all of it, what's actually happening is movement towards something better. Not perfect, not without its own adjustments and recalibrations along the way, but better, a bigger life. Closer relationships in the places where closeness makes sense. More space in the places where space is what's needed. A version of your days that has more room in it than the version you've been living in. If you're feeling something right now, some sense of anticipation or unease or both at once, that's appropriate. That's actually exactly what this feels like from the inside while it's happening. Not calm, not settled, movement, current, the water around you starting to have direction again after a while of feeling still. Let it move you. You don't have to figure out where it's going all at once. Just notice that it's moving. That's enough for now.